Hello and welcome friends. In this unit, that is Introduction to Sales Management, up till now we have discussed sales management, the basic introduction, scope, objectives, and we talked about the various theories. And you would recall that in the last session that we had started talking about the process of personal selling. This was the process that we had talked about in the last session, and now what we'll be doing is we'll be taking up each of these steps in detail. So the first step is prospecting or lead generation. Now what is a prospect? You know already. Prospect is somebody who has never earlier purchased your product, but he might purchase your product in future. So that is why he is a prospect. So if he purchases your product, then he would become a customer or a buyer. Now what is prospecting? Prospecting is identifying the prospects who are likelier to purchase my product. For example, if you are let's say focusing on your target market is Pithoragarh and you are focusing on Pithoragarh, not every single customer in Pithoragarh is equally likely to buy your product in near future. Some are more likely to buy your product, and these kind of people, these kind of elements in your target market would be known as prospects, and the process of identifying them would be known as prospecting. Another term for this is lead generation. Lead generation, so that lead basically means somebody who is likely to purchase your product in future if he is convinced about the qualities of your product. So this is what lead is, and to generate lead would mean to identify these leads, right? Now how can you do prospecting or lead generation? Okay, so there are very many ways in which you can do prospecting, you can generate leads. I'll be quoting only a few of them. Please understand, the methods that I'll be quoting would not be exhaustive, and it actually depends on the creativity of the salesperson, how he generates lead or how he does the prospecting. So it all depends on how creative you are. So you can come up with your own ways of generating leads or finding out, identifying the prospects. So one way could be to ask the current customers to suggest prospects. For example, Reader's Digest, they come up with a scheme. They give away one coupon along with that magazine, and in that particular coupon you have to mention the name of 10 people who you feel that they might want to purchase Reader's Digest in future. So your acquaintances who may like to purchase Reader's Digest in future. So you have to fill up this coupon and then you have to send it back to Reader's Digest based on the names provided by you, which are basically leads provided by you. Reader's Digest would do what? They would contact these people and then they would try to find out whether they're interested in subscribing to Reader's Digest. So this is one way of prospecting or lead generation, right? So please understand, why would a current customer do this? You will have to incentivize him. So for example, what you probably can do is you can incentivize him by saying that if one of the leads provided by the customer materializes, that particular lead starts purchasing the product, places the order for the product, then in that case the current customer would be rewarded. So he would probably be given away one whole year of Reader's Digest subscription for free. So this is how you incentivize your customers to suggest prospects, so that they are ready, so that they are forthcoming with the names of the prospects or the leads. Another way could be referrals. Referrals is, you can ask your dealers, you can ask your suppliers, you can ask your bankers. Bankers are people from whom you are availing financing. So you have gone to a bank to avail finance to get credit. So that particular entity is your banker. So you can ask these entities for referrals, which means these people can also suggest the names of those people who may want to buy your product, who may purchase your product in future. So based on the names provided by these people, now you can contact these people in the next step, right? Again, you can go for non-competing sales representatives, and you can also ask them, request them for referrals. Now what do we mean by non-competing sales representatives? Now let's take example of a salesperson who is selling refrigerator, and let's say you are selling the televisions, right? So this particular sales representative is selling refrigerators and you are selling televisions. Now this sales representative has a list of those customers who have bought refrigerators from him. The customers who have bought refrigerators, they have sufficient income to buy such white goods, durable goods, and so if you are also able to access this list, then probably you can contact them and try to sell your televisions to these customers, right? So this way the lead provided by a salesperson who is selling refrigerators can help you in selling your own televisions. And why is this particular individual a non-competing sales representative? Because you are selling television, why is he selling refrigerators? So in that sense you are not competing with each other. So the sales representative is selling refrigerators, so in that sense you are not competing with him. So he would be more ready, he would be more forthcoming, and he would probably provide you the list of his customers. Fine. So this is how referrals work, and you can ask these entities for referrals. You can ask these entities to suggest names of those customers who might buy your product, who might be interested in your product. Then cold canvassing. Cold canvassing is when you go unannounced. So what you will do is, if you feel that a particular customer might buy your product, so you go unannounced. So for example, if I'm selling industrial generators, what can I do? I can go to schools, because I know schools require industrial generators. And I don't need to book an appointment first. I would straight away go there. And then maybe if I get an opportunity, I'll talk to the CEO of the school, to the director of the school, and try to sell my product. Now this is called cold canvassing, because you have not actually booked an appointment first, informed the prospect first. You have straight away gone there and you have interacted with the prospect there. If somehow you are not allowed to interact with the prospect simply because you don't have an appointment, at least what you can do is you can leave behind your brochure. So this is an example of cold canvassing. Then let's talk about inquiry data. What do we mean by inquiry data? Suppose you are selling an industrial generator and there was some kind of a fair, trade fair organized in the Nagarpalika Maidan, and you had actually installed your booth there. And some people had come and they had had a look at your product which you had displayed in your booth. At that particular point of time, you had noted down their phone numbers. Now this list of phone numbers can also be a good thing to start with. You can call up these people who had visited your booth and who had expressed some kind of interest. Naturally they would be visiting and spending time in your booth because they are interested in the products which have been displayed in your booth in the trade show. So naturally they must be interested. These people must be having a higher level of interest in your offer. So what would you do? You would call up these people one by one and then see whether they can be converted into customers, right? Then what if there have been telephonic inquiries? Some of the customers have called upon your telephone, your company's telephone. So naturally these are the people who might have felt interested in your product, in your offering. So you can again call up these people and ask them whether they are willing to buy your product. So this is basically telephonic inquiry. Then if you have received such inquiries through emails, and if you have some people who have visited your website and they have clicked on your website, they had spent some time, considerable amount of time on your website, this would mean that they must have been interested in your offer. So you can access the data of such customers, and nowadays we have technology to do that, and then you can contact them in the next step, right? So these are basically known as the inquiry data. So whenever a particular prospect has come to your booth, or maybe has mailed in or telephoned in, or maybe has visited your website just to inquire about what all products or services you sell, So the data that you collect of these people is known as the inquiry data, and that can be a very good point to start with, right? And then you can always purchase commercial data sources. Now what do we mean by commercial data sources? Some people, some entities, some organizations do what? They collect and maintain a database of prospects. So for example, if I want students to take admission into BBA, I can buy such database which is maintained by different organizations. These organizations, they collaborate with CBSE and UP board and Uttarakhand board and get the list of the students who have appeared in the class 12th exam, and then they would be ready to sell it to me, and I will have to pay for it. And once I have access to this particular data, I can call up these students so that I can convince them about taking admission in BBA. So this is what we mean by commercial data sources, right? So this is how you go for prospecting. But then once the prospecting is over and you have identified the prospects, what is the next step? The next step is going to be qualifying. Qualifying would mean finding out which of the prospects are willing to buy your product, which of the prospects are ready to buy your product, are likely to buy your product. So this is what qualifying is. And why is it known as qualifying? Because what you do is, based on the outcome of this particular step, you qualify, you categorize all the prospects that you have into hot, warm and cold, right? So what do you do with the hot prospects? They are the likeliest to buy your product in immediate future. So you are going to focus your sales efforts on them. So you may provide the list of such hot prospects to your field sales force, who would then go to these prospects, visit them and try to convince them to buy your product. So this is what you do with the hot prospects. What do you do with the cold prospects? Cold prospects are the least likely to buy your product. So you simply do not do anything. You simply just keep the names and the other contact details of such prospects in your database. You don't take any immediate action because they are less likely to buy your product. However, you can use this particular list at a later stage where some of the cold prospects may turn into hot prospects. I'll give an example. So for example, you have a list of people who are likely to buy a product. Supposing you have a list of people and then you find a particular individual who has brought a car only this January. So naturally he is not going to buy your car in the next 2-3 years. However, by 2024 or 2025, he might be looking to get the old car replaced. So this particular individual who was in 2020 and 2021 a cold prospect because he had only recently bought a car, in the next 3 years, by the time it was 2024, 2025, he became a hot prospect. Why? Because now he's looking to get his old car replaced, right? So you simply keep such prospects in your database so that you can contact them at a later date. What is warm? Warm is somewhere between hot and cold. They are likely but not as likely as the hot prospects to buy your product. So they might buy your product, but for that you require sustained efforts. So you'll have to interact with them regularly and convince them over a period of meetings. So in the first meeting itself, they probably would not be convinced about the quality of product. So you'll have to keep in touch with them, and then over a number of sessions, over a number of interactions, then you might be able to convince them to buy your product. So these are called warm prospects, right? So basically qualifying is categorizing the prospects into hot, warm and cold. And how do you do this? You assess their interest level, plus you also assess whether they have the financial capacity to make the payment to purchase the product. So if the prospect is only interested in your product, for example, there would be everybody who would be interested in buying a Mercedes, but not everybody has the financial capacity to buy the Mercedes car, right? So you assess the interest level as well as the financial capacity, and then based on these assessments, whether he is interested, whether he has the purchasing power, you decide whether a particular prospect is a hot, warm or cold one, right? For this purpose, what you can do is you can contact through phone. So you have got your leads, then you can call up every single customer, every single prospect in this particular list of leads one by one, and then you can interact with them, and then based on that interaction you can find out whether they're interested in your product and whether they have the financial capacity to buy your product, and then qualify these prospects as whether they are hot, warm or cold. Now let us talk about the third step. What happens in the third step? Now that you have, in the first step, what did we do? We found out who could be the prospects, who could probably purchase my product at a later point, at an in immediate future. In the second step, what did you do? You try to qualify them, categorize them as hot, warm and cold, so that you can start acting on the hot prospects because they are very likely to buy your product. In pre-approach, that is the step 3, what are you going to do? You are going to decide how to approach these hot prospects. Please understand that you are yet to approach, so you are not interacting with them in this particular stage. You are only planning for this interaction which would come in the next stage, right? So you are not interacting with them, you are just planning your interaction with these prospects. So what do you do here? You need to learn about the prospect or the prospect firm. What do we mean by prospect firm? Please understand. Many a times, as I told you in the last session also, you probably would be in a B2B situation where you are not selling to one individual customer, industry generator to just one customer, but you might be selling, let's say, industry generator to a firm. So whosoever are the hot prospects, be it the individuals, be it the firms, you will have to learn about them. Try to find out what kind of business processes they have, what operations do they have, because this will help you understand what kind of needs these people would have, so that accordingly you can customize your presentation and you can customize your product to suit these needs. This will also help you decide what would be an appropriate product for these kind of prospects. Then you should also learn about who are the current suppliers and why they are dissatisfied with the current suppliers. So for example, you are selling industrial generators to schools. So some of these schools may have already purchased an industrial generator, but they are looking forward to some other industrial generator because they are probably not happy with the quality of the last one that they purchased. So you need to find out why they were not happy, why they were dissatisfied, what were the problems that they faced while operating the generator, because you don't want the same kind of problems in your generator also, because that would mean that even if you sell your product, the customer would not be satisfied. So you would want to know why they were dissatisfied with the earlier products that they had purchased or with their current supplier, and why do they want to switch to you as the new supplier. And then you would also probably want to know who all are involved in the purchase committee, who all are involved in the purchase decision. In case of a firm, there is a committee which is formed for procurement decisions. So who all are involved? What are their buying styles? What are they looking forward to? Do they negotiate for the lowest price? Do they value quality over the price? And what is their personality characteristics? Because once you are equipped with this knowledge, then you can decide how to tackle and how to make your presentation to these purchase committee members. Supposing you are selling to a household, for example, you are trying to sell a car to a household, that can also be a personal selling effort. That can also be a personal selling process. Therein you need to find out who all are involved in the household in making the purchase decision. Is it only the mother? Is it only the father? Or they jointly are taking the decision? Do the children play an important role? Because if they do, then you would also have to convince the children about the quality of the car that you are selling. So you need to know about your prospect thoroughly, so that you can accordingly customize your presentation and you can accordingly customize your product according to the requirements of the prospects, right? So this is what you do in the pre-approach. Based on the results of pre-approach, you do what? You plan your sales call. You decide what the call objective would be. What do you mean by sales call? Visiting the customer, visiting the prospect, so that he can be converted into customer. So you would have to decide the call objective, whether you are only going to qualifying the prospect, whether you are going to gather information from him, some additional information, whether you would be aiming at actually making the sales to him, and whether you would be aiming at obtaining a repurchase order from him. So these are the objectives. You will have to pick up one of them. A new prospect who has never earlier bought your product, you might want to gather information so that accordingly you can customize your product for this particular prospect. Or you can also qualify him once more as hot, warm or cold prospect. Or you may also decide to focus on selling the product to this particular prospect, converting this prospect into a customer in the very first visit. Or you might be focusing on getting a repeat order from him, right? So these are the different kind of objectives that you'll have, and then you basically decide which particular objective you are going to focus on depending on the information that you have obtained here. And then you also decide which would be the mode of the contact, because now you know about your prospects well, you know about their personality. Would they prefer you to visit them personally, whether they would prefer a phone call from your side or simply an email from your side? If they are very busy, naturally they would not want you to personally visit them, they would want you to call them up. So you should know about all these things also, because then accordingly you decide whether to personally visit them or whether to just simply contact them over phone or email. And plus you also decide when, which day of the week, at what time of the day, and where to visit your prospect. Now that you know about your prospects well, because of this particular step of pre-approach, you can use this information. For example, if you know that your prospect, let's say, is a school, and these schools generally remain open only till 12 o'clock on Saturdays, then probably after 12 o'clock is a good time for you to visit your prospect, visit the manager of the school, so that you can actually make an effort to sell your product to him. So these things would be decided based on your understanding, based on your learnings about the prospect, based on whatever knowledge you have gathered about whatever information you have gathered about the prospect, right? Thank you friends for your time. In the next session that we'll cover up the remaining 5 steps in the personal selling process. Thank you very much.